individuals who started the climate.
Oh, it was actually,
His name previously.
yeah.
Environmentalist, lower.
No. It was actually he's a business graduate from the University of Minnesota.
But under Wikipedia, Al Gore is one of the major investors along with Hank Paulson.
Yeah.
Were the two major principals in the
And getting it started. Yeah, I doubt if they are now. Probably getting it started, but yeah. Oh no, I'm sure when that started out, there weren't many investors at all. And I think given Al Gore's politics, he would have been very much in favor of that and would have invested to help get that started. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, because you're talking about companies like Ford and Dow, and which they could.
Well, they were participants in it.
Yeah.
Who started the idea.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
Is
that's.
the University of Minnesota going to be involved in this at all, working with landowners?
We are through extension, so I mean, and that's basically I have part of my work is extension, so we've talked to a lot of people about that, kind of put forward what's happening out there, what's happening, and letting people know in case there is interest. So
as a landowner, who would you get in touch with once this program, if it gets?
Yeah. You could get in touch with us, but what we usually do is refer people to the aggregators. Because, I mean, this is their business, they know what they're doing, and they're much more on top of it than we are probably. But we, try and provide, the basic information so people can make a decision. But if you're ready to start trading on that market and entering into some kind of agreement, it'd be the aggregator that you want to work with.
Not necessarily the forester.
Well,
Some of those be aggregators?
Yeah, actually, there's a couple aggregators out there that do forestry, and they've
We
been.
already have a private forester.
Yeah, well, that's okay. That's a very good question. Actually, most of these markets, Chicago requires that you have some kind of certification. It could be Forest Stewardship Council, SFI, the Sustainable Forestry Initiative, or tree farm certification. And to get that, you need to work with a forester. You're going to have to do an inventory probably. So you need a forester for that. So if you already have somebody you're working with, they could, do that. They might be the ones you want to contact, the aggregators. But there are a couple specific aggregators that have worked more with forestry than others, and have really developed this program. They've also looked at if you sell timber off of your land, you convert it into a wood product, a solid wood product, something like this, you can get credit for that. Because that's basically, instead of, if it goes into paper, it might go back into the atmosphere pretty quick. This is going to be around for a number of years. And they've actually calculated the number of years that, this will probably sequester that carbon before it's tossed in the landfill and deteriorates.
The primary forestry species we have is poplar.
Yeah.
Which pulp is the only basic, useful source
Yeah.
for that. That would be an oak tree or hardwood tree.
Yeah.
Which are a lot rarer.
Yeah, no,
northern southern forests.
yeah, and that'd be true.
Are there restrictions on if you do sell for poplar?
No, I think
Join this program?
the only restriction is then you'd have to do your carbon balance. So if you dip below, what the money you received already, then you'd have to have regrowth that got to that level again before you got a payment. So again, it's what you sequester minus what's been released. So if you convert it to paper, then they consider that releasing that back.
So there wouldn't be a payback, you would get your dollars, and then at the point you harvest,
Yeah.
then your payment will stop until it starts growing.
Yeah, right, until it gets back up to that level and beyond that level again, yeah. And, those are rules that they're not hard and fast yet because of the market, but that's more or less how it works. Question?
There's an international market?
Yeah.
But there's a heck of a difference in the European market price and the U.S. price and everything like that.
Right, yeah.
Now, and that's been a free market, it's established itself?
That's a regulated market in Europe. But what do you mean by a free market, I guess?
I mean, the market wasn't established or set by those that are buying and selling it.
Yeah.
It wasn't established by government.
Well, the government's been involved with that establishment, just to have some kind of regulatory agency, I guess. But there are, the other thing there is a voluntary market out there. So, for example, think Merrill Lynch paid several $1 million to Indonesia to maintain tropical forest. And that was a private deal. But there are, on that voluntary market, there are standards. So there have been people that have actually done the protocols that have to be applied to that voluntary market. Because everybody that's, it's like any market, if I buy, 100,000 tons of carbon from you, I want to know that's sequestered and that, there's not somebody going in there illegally harvesting those trees and releasing that into the atmosphere. So there's been a lot of work done on those protocols, making sure that, if you put that product on the market, that you actually are doing the sequestration. But there's, right now, a lot of, there's that regulated market in Europe, there's this voluntary market, there's a voluntary market in the U.S., so a lot of different activity going on.
The cap and trade is not going to, isn't going to interfere with that, what I'm calling the free market,
It'd just be another market, based on the cap and trade. So I would expect that those companies that would be buying credits could buy them in, Indonesia, wherever. They could probably go to that market and use them to offset their emissions. The bill that's in Congress right now actually recognizes what's called reduced emissions from degradation and deforestation. So those are payments made to countries so they maintain forests. Because again, we're losing, 20% of the carbon is from deforestation right now. Yeah.
Well, this is the first time I've had anybody explain about these credits, like carbon credits.
Yeah.
And there's the news, but I didn't pay much attention because I don't have any forests.
Sure.
Does it work like this? A company could be in the United States and they can pollute as much as they want, as long as someone in another country is growing some trees for them, so their air in the neighborhood, let's say, gets cleaner and ours gets dirtier. And also, down the road, because they're buying these credits, does that make the product cost more that they manufacture over here because this is another expense to run the business?
Yeah, and I think on the first issue, and carbon dioxide is something that enters the atmosphere.
Yeah.
So it circulates globally. So, but this is a criticism of it that you can continue to emit the carbon dioxide in Minnesota, for example, and pay for credits in Indonesia.
We're breathing that while they make the spirit of the old stacks. It eventually dissipates, but there's a lot of factories here creating this pollution, but they have this offset.
Yeah.
Here.
But, yeah, I guess, in terms of carbon dioxide, we do have a lot of other rules that regulate what can be emitted into the atmosphere, here. Yeah, and this is just another one that deals specifically with the carbon dioxide.
Do you think in the long run it's going to raise the price of those products? Because this is
Yeah, it could, it's definitely, that's the way the markets work. That could
the
certainly.
little guy on the bottom is going to be paying again for some other government scheme.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on, this is a very polarizing discussion that in terms of what's happening, but when you see some of the projections of what can happen with this climate change that's expected, it's a little frightening. And you can, and there's arguments on both sides, and I'm not really here to defend one side or the other, but really put forth what's happening here. But there is a concern. I work with this forest ecologist that tell everybody that whenever I talk to him about this, I learn a lot, but I'm always depressed after I talk to him. He's talking about the boundary waters being an oak savanna in 50 years and we're starting to see these changes. These forest ecologists see changes. Species on an island in the Mille Lacs that was never there before, but now is. And it used to be in a different zone, basically.
I even read something where they say within 15 to 30 years we're going to have the climate that Nebraska has.
Yeah.
Which is hard to imagine that.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah, that's the thing. And again, it's the kind of thing we do know that there's a whole lot more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere than there was, 100 years ago. And, it's the balance of things. Something's got to change to make that adjustment. And